but I'm a person who says to my investors, if you don't agree with me that we should do deals with very low or no debt, go do deals with someone else. Because there's 4,000 syndicators with $100 million portfolio and larger in the United States today. I'm one of 4,000. I don't think there's another one of the 4,000 who does debt-free deals.
Who's this? Oh, you're an entrepreneur? Oh, you're a real estate investor. Oh, you're trying to learn from those who did it. Well, come into the lab then. Put your white coat on, gloves on, notepad, and let's build, y'all.
I want to give you the intro that you deserve, sir, because my team does a very good job of finding unique individuals, and you've been in the game for decades. And so I'm interested to kind of unpack. I'm a curious George myself. I love unconventional models, or even what might seem conventional to you, just a complete paradigm shift. Because, you got folks who've been doing multi-family lives or fixing and flipping, and that's all they know, right? To when you have a when you have a hammer, all you see is nails, right? But I like to have individuals that come from different walks and planes, and you, sir, are just that. And so I want to unpack that, Joel, if you would allow me. But I'm gonna give you a quick intro here because I looked up your history and what your team sent over, and it's just very interesting. Just to give you a little bit of background on this show, we have a lot of listeners who are, either bootstrap operators, whether they're looking to really get into the investing, or they are seasoned investors. And so in the lifetime of this show, when we first started, we were very heavy on multifamily, had a lot of syndicators. And the only reason that happened is because I had an agency that would produce the show for these multifamily syndicators who were trying to get their name out there. And then we transitioned to short-term rentals because that's the world we got into. So I got interested in interviewing individuals in that sector. And then we got into temporary housing, midterm rentals. And so I've kind of progressed along with my audience, and I've taken them in different experiments. But my whole goal is to always expose as many different experiments as possible so that they can choose the one to stick with and build that niche and go deep, right? Then later on go broader and diversify should they want to. So with that said, I don't think, I've had some, storage guys, I've had some, but when you are very niched, and when I look at Brit Properties and I went to your website, one thing that it said was very straightforward, which I love, because I believe marketing with my background is just that. Keep it simple. It says industrial real estate syndications, debt free. So I've never heard that positioning before. Can you help us understand, with your plethora of knowledge that you have in your experience, what that even means to someone? If you and I meet at a meetup, what's industrial real estate? And then how does the syndication component come in? And I know you're super proud of this too. You show that there's a lot of it. You mentioned debt free. How does syndication and debt free come together? Please, let's unpack that.
Sure. So I've been in industrial real estate since I was 22 years old. I went to work for a family that was not my family that owned 83 industrial buildings, and they hired me as a leasing agent. Industrial is where products are manufactured and where products are distributed. If you drive along the tollways and highways of America, you drive by industrial buildings all the time. Those are the Amazon buildings in the largest case. And they're the smaller distributors and manufacturers in the smaller case. These are companies that are usually family owned, or they're big corporations, and they make stuff. Like, for example, you got the Shure microphone. Shure has a warehouse, Shure has a manufacturing plant, and Shure buys the 200 components that go into that microphone from other manufacturers who make products. So if I knew anything about this when I was in my teens, I probably would have gone into the manufacturing business, because those family businesses do really, really well. They make the same product year after year after year, and they sell it internationally. They sell to airplane manufacturers. They sell to automotive, to tractor manufacturers, components for iPhones, components for everything that's in your studio right there is made in an industrial building.
So that's so interesting because, when you think of different sectors, industrial is in a niche of in itself. When we think of big buildings, in the way things have transitions, even with COVID and stuff like that, you start thinking, I don't know, right? But in your case, when we talk about industrial, almost like a your true and tried model, what would you say has been kind of, as we see a lot of products being distributed, e-commerce, etc. What would you say is the landscape for someone like me who knows nothing? Has things changed where there's been a reduction in industrial? Has it been more of a, there's more of a demand, less of a demand? Things are going overseas. Like, what have you seen? I know this is like a very, kind of a large, kind of ambiguous question that I'm asking, and maybe kind of a, you know, kind of a challenge here that I'm putting in live, but I'm curious, like, what's this landscape like? Is it very similar to what we see in commercial buildings? Is it completely different? Have you seen a growth? What does the data show us with
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
happening?
It's completely different than all other forms of commercial. Office space is suffering. And
Mm,
the reason is because COVID wiped out a lot of people's jobs or their need to be in an office. So industrial, you have to go to work if you're in an industrial company because, for example, food processing can't be done from someone's house. So there's a lot of different kinds of food processors. One of our tenants manufactures protein bars. And
mm,
in fact, that company was on Shark Tank in year one.
no kidding.
So they have a warehouse on the west side of Chicago where they have a manufacturing section of the building and then a distribution section where they have racks with just boxes and boxes of their product. So they have about 80 people who work there. And it's a production line where the chocolate and the peanut butter and whatever the other ingredients are all come together and they form them and they go down, they get baked and then they get dried and then they get packaged and then they get put in a box. The industrial business is booming.
Mm,
There are not enough buildings for all the people who want to buy them or lease them. It's extremely tight. And the rents have gone up just in the past few years. While office space has gone down in value, industrial space has gone up. Our tenants are paying us roughly 40%, 50% more rent now than they were 4 years ago,
wow.
which really upsets them because they stay in buildings for an incredibly long time. It's extremely expensive to move your machines,
Right.
and it's really expensive to train new people
Mm.
because there's a lot of skilled labor that goes into each of these operations. It takes a long time to train someone to work on a machine that makes steel parts for airplanes.
Yeah, yeah, good luck trying to move that. So let me ask you, Joel, what are we talking? Because long is all relative. Are we talking 10 years, 15-year leases, 30? Like, what is a number that is very traditional in the industrial space?
The leases are anywhere between 3 and 15 years.
Okay.
Most of our buildings are 3 to 5 years, but the tenants
Mhm.
keep staying every time the lease comes up and it's time to think about leaving or renewing the lease. They almost all renew the lease because they can't really afford to move the equipment. They don't really
Yeah,
want
well,
to.
you would have to think as you're saying that, and I'm just thinking on the fly here, the cost of you moving to find a cheaper or more, savings would literally completely wipe out any savings you would make anyways, right? So you kind of have that advantage of having low turnover, for lack of better words, right?
Yeah, so what we're getting what we call net rent. So the tenant that occupies one of our buildings are usually freestanding, which means there's only one tenant. It's not like a multi-tenant, like a multi-family that you would typically see in most investment real estate. We
Mhm.
buy these single tenant, single operator buildings, and the tenant pays the taxes, the insurance, the maintenance, and the utilities. So as a landlord, the management is mostly accounting to collect the rent and make sure that they pay the expenses and driving by the building every so often to make sure they're cutting the lawn. We also inspect the roofs. We also make sure they're taking care of the HVAC, because if those are not maintained well, the costs are extremely high to replace units. New HVAC units in a new roof are hundreds of thousands of dollars. And in a large building, they could be millions of dollars.
So this is also is it the same thing as triple net lease? This is what you're talking about?
They're triple net lease, yes.
Triple net leases. That's very interesting. So, I mean, this sounds like the golden goose here. Tell me, let's retract a little bit, because I'm looking back at your history. Like you've been kind of at this for quite some time. Let's take us a step back, because you said something when you started early. Now you almost wish, not wish, but in retrospect, hindsight is 2020. Wow, like the manufacturing business might be kind of where it's at based on what you're saying, which I love, by the way. This is always how I get exposed to new ideas, is just by default, kind of as you're going through your own experiment, then you come across another industry and you're like, this is kind of interesting. But take me back to in the beginning. What was your way into this? I think you started to talk about it briefly, and kind of I want to see how that kind of transitioned to kind of where are you at now. And obviously I see you mentioned something about debt-free ownership. So you obviously overcame the hump of 2008, etc. But take us back even before that. What was, Joel's entry to this, exposure to this phenomenon, for what it's worth, and this industry, and how did you kind of wrap your arms around it?
So I went to work for this family. There was a father, Milt, in his 60s, a daughter,
Mhm.
Bonnie, a son, Steve, and a son, Randy, and then another guy who wasn't a member of the family but was part of their management team, named Richard. So I had these 5 people who were all my mentors. I actually had no idea what industrial real estate was. And a friend of mine said, "You want to go into real estate?" And I said, "I do." He said, "Call this guy, Milton Podolsky, and see what happens." So I called Milt on a Tuesday at age 22, fresh out of the University of Michigan. And I said, "I'm looking for a job in real estate." And he said, "Can you be here in an hour?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll be there in an hour." So I showed up and he interviewed me, and then he brought in his son and his other son and this other fellow that I had never met. And I was team interviewed. It was like an ambush. And I answered the questions. They said, "If we have an empty building and we want to fill it up, what would you do to fill it up?" And I said, "Well, where would it be?" "Well, Elk Grove Village, Illinois." "Oh, okay. And what's that near?" "Near O'Hare Airport." "Oh, well, I would go there and I would look around, and then I would see who the neighbors are, and I would call on the neighbors in the industrial park to see if they might want to move into your vacant building when their lease is up." And the older fellow, Milt, the dad, said, "You're hired." And that was it.
Mm. What was
So
that?
that's
What was that critical? Or you could call it at 22. That's pretty young. Where did that instinct come from? What was your background there? What did you learn? What were you kind of like? Were you curious? Were you kind of inquisitive? What do you recall that thinking process came from?
I had success as a much younger person. When I was 14,
Mhm.
I started my own lawn cutting business in my
Okay.
neighborhood. And I went door to door in my neighborhood and convinced people to allow me to cut their lawn for $8 a week. So I was cutting many, many lawns a week. And in addition to that, I hired people from my middle school and from my local high school to help me cut the lawns. And so I had multiple employees. And how did I get the business? I went door to door in the neighborhood and I said, "I'm a lawn cutter. Would you hire me? I'll do a good job." So I knew that I could stop in and see people I didn't know and talk to them easily about what it is that I had to offer. And what I had to offer was vacant industrial space in the area.
Where do you think, Joel, that 14 is quite young. Where do you think that came from? Or
It's interesting. My parents were both in school when I was a kid. They both were in a family business, my mother's family business, her parents, and neither one of them really liked it. They wanted to be therapists. So they both went back to school. So money was tight because they were in school part-time and working part-time.
Hmm.
And if I needed or wanted anything, I would go to them and say, I'd like to buy something or do something. And their answer was, money's tight. So I said, okay, well, then I'm going to go make some. And that's how it all started. I needed to have a stream of income as a 14 and 15-year-old just to do certain things that other kids were doing that their families were paying for.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Do you think um entrepreneurs are born or they're made?
Well, I don't know. I've thought about it. I hire a lot of summer interns, and
Yeah.
what I've learned with literally 200 interns over 40 years is that either you have it or you don't, but you might develop it. You might not be born with it, but you might develop it. This entrepreneurial spirit, or call it ambition, ingenuity. Usually, if I hire 4 summer interns, 2 of them are pretty good, and 2 of them just don't have any motivation, and they're just there for the job. So, how does somebody decide they're going to be a motivated person and really work hard and succeed? I think it's cultural. I think it's maybe familial. Maybe they get it from the messages they get at the dinner table at home,
Yeah.
or maybe
Yeah,
it's need.
yeah, I can resonate with that. The only thing I don't resonate with it, and I kind of wish I did, or my story is my story, but I don't have like a cool, I sold lemonade at the lemonade stand story. If anything, I kind of followed the textbook of, okay, we're first generation, right? African parents, right? Uh, you know, doctor, lawyer, this, that was kind of like the box. And then in school, like one of the things I definitely recognize is the relationship with money, right? I think I heard that a lot and I didn't like it. Like the whole like, oh, we don't have it. Now, mind you, my parents did a good job of we were raised well, middle class for sure. I never struggled, but struggled in the sense of first generation immigrant, didn't know the language, hustled, bust their butts, got us a roof over our head, clothes all on our backs all the time. Great life, but it was still coming from a place of scarcity. So I can say that definitely there was that motivation there, but I never had the like selling, baseball cards or whatever, or lemonade stand story. But it did develop later on in college when my roommates were entrepreneurs, and I was just like, this is possible. And then that's when the paradigm shift happened and never looked back ever since. I love businesses, different business models, problem solving, leadership, building teams, all that stuff. But I don't see that in my childhood the way you would see it in your childhood.
Yeah.
Because 14 years old, that's pretty early, man. That's impressive stuff when it carries over, right?
What country did your family come from in it?
Congo.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
We were just
you
in
know,
Rwanda. We were in Rwanda last year.
wow, good for you. So you know, right, how turbulent that can be, and
Yeah.
you come to Europe and you get a better education, and that was us. That's where we were born, and then it was that, right? It was kind of like we were privileged because we knew there was a lot of family back home who didn't have the courage or the opportunity that my parents presented to us by coming over and studying. So I do see. So there's two things that I see, Joel. I'm just so curious because you've built such great big companies. Two things that I see: athletes and military um, do very well in the world of business. Do you see that? Do you see it differently? Thoughts?
I do. Well, I see the top athletes in the top military. It still takes a certain mindset. I
Mm.
know plenty of people who are in the military who have no ambition
Oh, interesting.
and struggle and may even have some substance abuse issues and some mental
Yeah.
health issues. And then there are some, I've got one particular investor who owns a building with me, and he's built up a multi-$100 million business where they provide services to the electric companies in the Midwest. And
Wow.
he is so successful, and he was a military guy. But I have another friend who is on the couch who's a military guy. So it
That's so
depends.
interesting, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. What I try to do in these interviews, I do believe that success leaves clues, and you do see some pattern, and part of that is pattern recognition, which we'll kind of get into because I'm sure in your years of experience you have a lot of that from within your sector. But there's some things that are, some pattern recognitions that I see, right? you starting kind of earlier on, having, a driving force too, but at the same time, there was a means to an end. You wanted to some things at 14, but you also had the aptitude and fortitude to be able to go get it. And not everybody has that. But then at the same time, you've worked with so many interns, and there's some things that are caught, not taught, and then some things that also you can learn. So I don't know. I find the human experience so interesting, and I'm constantly questioning and so curious about how it all works out. Can you turn a C player to an A player? Like there's just so many different things that are pretty fascinating about this journey of like entrepreneurship and just the human experience overall.
Yeah, I don't think you can turn a C player into an A player. I think the C player has to want to be an A player. I don't think
Mm,
there's any outside force that helps somebody to do better. They can see it, they can see an example of it and say, "Oh, I want to
yeah.
be like that." But they have to have incredible drive. It's a matter of like that internal, that instinct to really want to be successful. In my case, I'm 66,
Mhm.
and I was really driven as a younger person. When I was in my 20s and 30s and 40s, I built things. And lately, it's been more about the relationships. And so it can change. And one of the
Yeah.
things that has changed the most for me is now, as we talked about earlier, I do these real estate acquisitions, which are no debt, raise the money from a group of people and go buy a building and own it for a very long time and lease it to an industrial company. And you know what makes me the happiest? It's not how many buildings I buy or how much we make on a deal. It's how deep the relationships are
Mm,
with the investors that join us.
that's so good.
Yeah,
That's so good.
and some of them come from a very different point of view than I do, and we discuss where they come from and where I come from, and we find a meeting place. We often go to lunch and just talk about life, the world, the big picture, and real estate and business.
Yeah.
But that's been the best part is that I'm a syndicator, and syndicators can either be very interested in their investors and their tenants, or they can be very uninterested in their investors and their tenants. And for
Mm.
me, I there's something about getting to know the people that I do business with and getting to know them really well that makes this worthwhile.
That's I really appreciate you sharing that for a transition because I um recently read a book. So I would say every 5 to 10 years there's a book that's a very big paradigm shift um from where my mindset is, and I'm a big mindset person. And I don't know if you know the book Die with Zero by Bill Perkins.
No,
Okay. You might appreciate it because it talks about, I mean, it's a billionaire that young billionaire who's gone through the battle, and obviously when you get to the billion status there's obviously a lot that you've kind of gone through, but one of the things he talks about is like it's easy to get caught up in the game of being in the habit of making more money, or just working to work. It's all habits. And one of the things that he really kind of flips it on his head is, in a perfect world, you get into a place where you're not exchanging things for money some more, but you're really exchanging for memory dividends, which is what you're talking about, relationships, right? That's what you're optimizing for. And you can do a lot of things in life, but you got to get the order right. And so there's some things you might do in your 30s and 40s, etc. But there's some things you might, be able to really put in the right order to do later on in time. And that's kind of the key takeaway, that you should really be maximizing for memory dividends. And as you're speaking about the relationships, it makes me think about that because it talks about the importance as well of, being able to forecast how many times you're going to be able to spend time with that quality person relationship and not taking for granted and all that stuff. So, which is for me as a work, since my 20s, now my 30s, right? Still working, just kind of keeping that in mind, that you're working to live and not just living to work. But you can be just as driven, but also be intentional on the way there as well towards your goal. So it's interesting to hear you say that when you say I'm 66 and now my priorities have changed a little bit. It kind of goes back to the, isn't that why we're doing this for, like to spend time, quality time with the people that we actually like and that we care for and build something significant with. So I don't know, it's just a timely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what else what I've learned also at my age is you do lose people along the way because
Mm,
illness, sudden issues come up, and it changes, I think, a person's perspective to have a lot of loss. And so, and also to go through struggles, to go through a difficult journey. This year, my wife and I have gone through a tough journey. She was diagnosed with pancreas cancer about a year ago. We got back from Africa. Actually, we were in Africa for a couple of weeks. We got back and she was having some symptoms, and she ended up going in for a CT scan and a biopsy. And it's been a year's journey of major difficulty. And she's fine. Amazingly, there's a 13% 5-year survival rate with pancreas cancer, and she's one of the lucky ones so far. But one of the people I work with has another terrible disease, and another person I know is struggling with some things that are happening in his older age. And I think that the appreciation for people who are special people in our lives sometimes is underestimated, and the gratefulness to have them is underestimated. And it's just, I think, being self-aware and realizing that it's the people who make your life and the relationships in the community. And what I've tried to do is build a community of friends and investors, and my investors have become friends, and my friends have become investors. And it gives us something different to do. We go take a ride to look at a building that we own together, and then we go to lunch. That's special. That's really nice. And this is particularly true in the context of people I know are not necessarily doing so well physically, and they're not here forever. And there's no second chance to build a better relationship with someone we care about.
Yeah.
So part of the beauty of my business, I know, with your business, as I listen to what you talk about, you have some short-term tenants, right? I have these long-term tenants, and I get to know them. You want to hear the biggest problem? When I become friends with a tenant, it's hard to jack their rent up.
That's interesting. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
And
Yeah.
they get mad at me when I jack their rent up. It's like, hey, we're friends. What are you doing to me?
Yeah.
And so if I have a tenant who's in one of our buildings for 20 years, which does happen, it's really hard for me to go to them and explain why the rent just went up 40%. And they look at me and they say, I thought we were buddies. And the answer is, well, I also have investors and I have to answer to them. So there's a market rental rate, and you have to pay the market rental rate because you've been in our building a long time. You'll pay the lower end of the range. But then my investors say, well, why would you ever say that to anybody? We want the higher end of the range. So that's one of the things I struggle with right now.
That is a tricky dance. And that's such good context there, right? Like, you're right. Ours is, compared to yours, very short term. We call ourselves midterm, which is longer than the traditional short term, but it's still shorter term. What's interesting is, I would say, our avatar is more the relocation companies that we partner with and foster long-term relationships. And we can talk, oh, remember when we moved this family in and that family in? So that's kind of where our relationship is built. But to your point, I thought that it'd be your investors would be a nice scapegoat and say, hey, it's not me, it's them. But it's interesting. You have to answer. It's like a revolving door. You have to answer to both sides, which could be tricky. But how have you been able to navigate that? And it sounds like it's kind of comes with the business, but like, how have you been able to overcome that for someone else who might be in that same situation?
Experiment Nation, you've heard me talk about how multiple investors across the nation are landing these lucrative midterm rental insurance contracts by making these small tweaks
on the branding and marketing side, especially if you're an existing short-term rental operator. There is a quick and easy shift that you can make with the ride guide in place. And because we've launched a 2-day boot camp that not everyone could attend in real time, I've put together a recording where you can get all the materials and all the guides to focus on rebranding either your short-term rental business or your current midterm rental business, so that you can actually have the insurance companies reach out to you. And then day 2 is if you want to actually play offense, how you can reach out to them by listing on the right platforms, etc. If you're looking to get this MTR bootcamp so that you can start optimizing and you can start receiving these lucrative contracts that again provide less headaches, less turnovers, unlike the Airbnb space, you can start receiving inquiries today by having the right guide in place. So please go to experimentrealestate.com/MTR bootcamp or click the link in the bio to make sure you get your hands on the midterm rental insurance bootcamp to fast track your way into landing these lucrative insurance contracts the exact same ways multiple investors have taken advantage of this unknown and untapped niche within the midterm rental umbrella.
Well, you're very insightful, Ruben, because the answer is my long-term investors who want higher rent, but understand my need to have a good relationship with my tenants and my investors. One of them sat with me at breakfast, I don't know, must have been about 8 years ago, and said, you answer to me as an investor, you need to get me the highest rent possible. Just blame me. So, that's what I do.
Yeah.
I say, I have this investor, his name is Nate, and we sat at breakfast and I said, I've got to increase the rent and I feel bad and it's difficult. I like the tenant. They become my friend. We go to dinner, we play golf. And Nate's answer was, just say, I've got this guy who's a tough investor and I do have to answer to him. And he's going to ask me next week why it is that you're paying such low rent.
Yep. That's
yeah.
Smooth. Copy paste, my friend. That's awesome. No, but it's also fulfilling though. I like how there's one thing I will say, and then I want to transition over to some of the all that you've done, because we're having such good conversation here. But one of the things I realize is that being very intentional in the business that you pick, and I almost call it like a lifestyle business, right? Like going to see a building, and I love content, documenting about it, and then having peers, investors that you can join this journey with makes the journey that much more fulfilling. I'm going to try to remember one of the things my mentor says. He says, there's 3 C's that will make someone fulfilled, is the ability to connect, the ability to contribute, and what's the third? I'm gonna mix it up here. But there's that element. While I pulled that up here, there's that element of being able to be in that in an ecosystem that you created that fits with your lifestyle, right? Like I wouldn't, it doesn't even feel like work. And maybe if you went into manufacturing, it wouldn't be that way. And the reason I can relate to that is because I used to own an agency, and it was good, but I wasn't able to pull in friends and family the way I am able to do it now in real estate. And it's it can get pretty lonely if you don't have the right business model. And yeah, it's good and it makes money, but what if you could, tour a building with and invest with, friends and family, and then pay them their returns on a monthly basis and be able to share that. I think we don't talk enough about the type of business and why it's so important to pick one that aligns with your lifestyle. And again, not everyone's social. Some people, they might pick a business where, it's not, I'd rather be low key and I don't want to see people. But in your case, it seems like it kind of fell hand in hand. Do you feel that way?
Totally. That's exactly right. I was driving around the other day and thinking, what would I be doing if I wasn't a real estate syndicator? And the answer is something creative with other
Mm,
people, maybe music, possibly making some kind of documentaries or
yes.
something more creative, more in the art world than in the business world.
Mm,
And I feel like I kind of missed the boat. I think I would have really enjoyed writing songs. I like creating things. So what I create is the opportunity to go look around to find buildings to buy and then put together a deal where I can explain it to someone and they can join me in being part of the investor group and collecting the rent and talking about strategy in real estate and what's happening. So
yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. This was going to bother me as you were speaking. It's creation, connection, and contribution. He says, this is one of my mentors, you know, you got to get all three right. You can get two out of three, but if you don't, if you get one out of three, then you're not going to be fulfilled. And I was like, I really do like that. And I do see that connecting
Yeah.
with individuals, contribution, and creation. Right.
Yeah. I think those are great. I've not heard that and I really like it.
Yeah. Very good. So 22, you get exposed to this. They hire you in. They're obviously bought into who you are as an individual, which is what I always believe is a reflection of businesses by the leader in itself. So you get your bearings in. What is it? What is the biggest paradigm shift that you learn at 22 into this family business you've never been a part of before that sticks out in your mind?
Paying attention to the details.
Mm,
Paying attention to the details is so hard for someone who's an ambitious salesperson. They think that someone else will do all the details for them and they don't have to pay attention. So I got in major trouble in 2008 and 2009 when the great financial crisis hit because I had a lot of debt. I borrowed money. My partner was a younger man. I was in my 40s. He was in his 30s when we started our business together. When I left the family I worked for to go start our own, and I stayed friendly with them, by the way, and I'm still friendly with them
yeah.
because
And
it's
what
really.
was yeah, relationship. And at that point, what do you think at that you said you were 40,
I was 31 when I left.
30? What made you take that leap? Like what gave you the insight that this is time now?
I was never going to be a member of the family business because it was their family, and
Mm,
I felt like I could always be a small player, but never like a major decision maker and major contributor there. So I left. It was very difficult to leave. I loved them. They were
yeah.
fantastic. And the paradigm shift to me was going from being a salesman for them to now running a business with all the various requirements, the governmental requirements, the legal requirements, the accounting requirements. And I wasn't prepared for that. And so I hired people to do it, but I didn't hire the right people to do it. So I've always struggled with the detail side of the real estate business. And I always want to have some folks on my team who are really good at the details. And I've learned I have to read every word in a contract because when you sign a contract, whatever it says is what you're agreeing to do.
Mm,
And so I've become almost like a lawyer when it comes to reading leases, uh, all kinds of other documents between different parties. And not reading the details and not understanding those things is really bad. And that's where I shifted. I shifted into becoming more of a reader and more of a dotter of the I's and a crosser of the T's. And it was one of the
mm,
things that one of the family members, Steve Podolsky, who I worked for, was the older son in the family I worked for. And he was really a detail guy. And he taught me how to do details by example and then also by editing my work. I would read a lease and he'd say, hey, you missed 14 of the 20 things. You got six right, but you
no
missed a
way.
bunch. And so he taught me, and that was a huge difference. And now I expect people that I work with to understand their own documents and what our agreements are And some people just sign anything, especially today with DocuSign.
Yeah,
People
that's
give you a
scary.
DocuSign and
It keeps scrolling down,
you
and you
push
just
the button,
next,
right?
next.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
you don't know what you're signing because there's no paper and you're not reading it. It's just like, oh yeah, I think I know what it says. You ever read a paragraph where it's such a long paragraph, you sort of like get a little bit like cross-eyed and you skip the middle of the paragraph and say, whatever that says, it's probably okay. That's bad. That's really
So
bad.
so let's talk about that because it seems that uh, I would almost anticipate, or at least based on the way you're answering, that you've been burned this way. Is this true? That it is okay. So what do you do, right? Because you mentioned two things. One is hiring and right, and then one is the details. So do you care to share what happened? 'Cause, and then B, what should you have done? And C, what can you do when you're reading something and you're like, well, kind of got to sign it, or do I? What's kind of like your action item when you come across something where, you probably need to sign, but you're probably unsure what you're signing? Because I think it's important. Let's start with like how you got burned, if it's relevant for the audience to at least get a lesson learned from that and go from there.
Sure. If you borrow money from a bank,
Hmm.
they give you documents that are this thick.
Yeah.
And their documents are sophisticated from their standpoint because they've been burned. So everything in a document, with almost no exceptions, is something to protect them against the borrower and
Yeah.
to take away the borrower's rights and to make the borrower put them more in peril if something goes wrong. And so there's something called Laser Pro documents that nearly every bank uses, and they are pretty standardized loan documents. And by signing some of these documents back when I was younger, without really understanding them, the banker would say, oh, these are standard documents. There's no such thing as a standard document. A standard document means I'm going to trick you into signing something that's good for me and bad for you, and I'm going to tell you it's the way it's always done. And the answer should be, let me read that and get back to you.
Mm.
And I did not read all the loan documents when I was in my 30s because I was running fast, buying a lot of buildings, raising a lot of money, finding a lot of tenants, making all kinds of commitments. And I don't think it's a good idea to sign a loan document without knowing what you're getting into. So in 2008, I was at 7 banks. I had $70 million in personal guarantees at 7 banks. And when things went bad, the banks had rights against me and my investors that I did not understand were their rights, where they could do things. Give you an example. If you borrow money for 7 deals at one bank, and the document says that a default on one deal puts you in default on all the deals, that is called a cross default. You can't have a cross default because why should your 6 deals and your 6 groups of investors be subject to being harmed because one deal went bad? So I was at this one bank. It was a very large bank, and they said these are standard documents. So I signed them, and my partner signed them, and we guaranteed the loan. And when things went bad with one deal, they took all of the 7 deals and they put them in what's called the workout department, and they made us subject to something. There was this forbearance agreement. I knew nothing of this. What I learned is that there are about 25 terms in a loan document that are harmful to the borrower. And if I'm going to be smart, I'm going to talk to the bank about those 25, and I'm going to give them what's called my side letter that says, even though the loan documents say this, it's subject to the side letter, and these things no longer apply that are in the documents. Give you an example. That one thing with, if one deal goes bad, they can come after you on all the deals. There's another thing called an insecurity clause, which means if the bank feels insecure, they can call the loan. Well, how would you determine insecurity?
No way.
It's their call. It's in all the documents. It's an insecurity clause in the bank documents. There's another one that most people don't realize. It's called a confession of judgment. It means you can't even fight what they're doing in court. You've given up. If you're in default, They win.
Wait, so this is so good. Thank you for sharing this. Number one. Number two, this whole side letter, it's so interesting because recently I think I had my enrolled agent CPA write a comfort letter. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. And I just love learning these new things. Tell me about this side letter, because one of the things I was going to say and push back on, right, respectively, is, well, listen, you're at their mercy. They're giving you the money. Sign the docs, right? Wrong. You're saying you have an opportunity to create a side letter. Who should, I've never heard of this, so enlighten me here and excuse my ignorance. Who is writing that? Is that a lawyer that's drafting that? Are you drafting an amendment and then getting the bank to also sign against what would actually benefit them? Like, that to me is hard to understand. And why would they do that? So help me understand how that process works, because that's very interesting.
Yes, the banks do not want to sign these. They usually don't see them because most people are too stupid to know that they can
Right.
negotiate the loan documents, and they just sign them. And I figured out by being in deep trouble. You said, what got you in trouble that made you do this? Well, I got in trouble. I was at 7 banks, and I had all these loans that most of them were good, but the ones that were bad brought the whole ship to the point where it almost sunk. Now, it didn't sink because I was persistent and I stuck with it, but it was hell. And I went into a depression, and I needed to go for some meditation and some medication. It was disastrous. If you ask my wife about it, it was the worst time of her life because we were struggling to stay afloat. And what I learned is, borrowing money from me is a real problem. So one of the things I do now is I usually syndicate my deals with no debt. So there's no bank. If there's no bank, there's no side letter, there's no debt. And it's much easier to have staying power when something goes wrong if there's no bank. But when there is a bank, I keep the loan to value ratio very low. I keep it below 30%. A lot of people think that's not a great thing because leverage is a real money
That was going to
maker.
be my next comment on what your thought was on that, but go ahead.
But I'm a person who says to my investors, if you don't agree with me that we should do deals with very low or no debt, go
There's
do deals
plenty
with
of
someone
other
else.
investors.
Because there's 4,000 syndicators with $100 million portfolio and larger in the United States today. I'm one of 4,000. I don't think there's another one of the 4,000 who does debt-free deals. And if someone doesn't like it, they can go to the other 3,999 and they can get lots of debt, and they take risk, and they can make a lot more money. With me, they're going to make a little bit less because there's no leverage, or there's very little leverage. But the safety factor in what I do, making sure that they're protected from losing their money to the bank from a foreclosure or from a forced sale, is very different than anyone else. It makes me feel comfortable. I sleep well at night. They sleep well at night. But when I do borrow money, it's only going to be at a bank where they'll take my side letter. And when I go through the side letter with the banker, they have to go get an approval from the bank's lawyer. And the bank's lawyer very often will say, well, we can't live with this. And the answer is, well, then I can't do my loan with you because I'm not signing a loan
It's not a
document.
good fit.
Yeah, I can't sign a loan document that I don't understand what my risk is.
Yeah.
And I would
Or
say
for
that
your investors too. Yeah.
I would say there's no other real estate buyer in my world, which is 3,999 other syndicators who own office buildings, multifamily, retail. I don't think there are too many others who look at it this way because I'm 66. I've had all these years of experience. I've learned the hard way. You know, you talk about your lab. My lab is the document lab. It's the owning property and experimenting with too much debt, and then experimenting with no debt, and then experimenting with a small amount of debt, and seeing what investors like and what they don't like. And my investors know me, and they know if they're going in with me, that if they can get a good return, it doesn't have to be a home run where they could lose all their money.
Yeah. That's interesting. So it's funny. That's very insightful. So thanks for sharing that. And it's funny. I just heard that like one of my mentors. I was just listening to this today. He's like, I can't be bought. I'm at a point where I cannot be bought. Right? You don't like it. There's somebody else for you. Which I love that because you put yourself in that position of power, where it's you don't if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. And I would almost imagine that, you attract your tribe, right? So a lot of the folks that you're probably working with, I would assume similar sentiments because they probably like that. Am I wrong or?
You're totally right. In fact, someone found me either on a podcast or through LinkedIn a few weeks
Yeah.
ago, and he called me up and he said, I like what you're doing. I've never met anyone else who does debt-free deals or low debt deals. I'd like to invest with you. And I said, how much are you going to invest? And he said, I'd like to start out with 300,000. And I said,
Mm.
okay. He says, but I'd like to have three separate deals where I can spread my risk and have some diversification. And I said, I can do that for you. I have three deals where you can put 100,000 in each one. And he sent me an email earlier last week. He sent it last week. And he said something to the effect of, let me see if I can read it to you. The message was, I've read well over 100 offering documents, and I've never seen any of them as straightforward as this. And I've never seen
Wow.
anyone with as low a level of leverage as what you have. And I'm so comfortable. Can you find someone else in another area of real estate who's like you that I could invest with? Because I don't know even I
Wow.
don't know where to find them.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. That was
I love that. That kudos to you because, you know, I love that. Like I love hearing that because that's your experiment, that's your experience, and that's what you're offering. And now you're attracting like-minded individuals who, if you have a good product, if you have something out there, the people will find you when you have that good product. And he's thrilled, clearly, to have found you, which
do
is
you know Seth
yeah.
Godin? Have you ever
Yeah,
watched?
of course. Yeah. Is that
So
the purple cow?
he talks about, I don't know what his books are called. He's got books on
I think I have it
strategy.
here.
He's
Yeah.
written a lot of books,
Yeah. I know Seth Godin. Big. Yeah.
but he says you need to have a strategy. And your strategy, if it's the same as everyone else, you won't do well because then you're like everybody else.
Mm,
And he says, but you have to know your strategy and you have to know how you're going to accomplish your strategic goals. And my strategy is to invest with like-minded people who don't want to lose money, who like safety in real estate, in industrial real estate. And I watched him the other night on a podcast. He was great. And I think what you're talking about, the experiment, it's an experiment because I'm the only person doing it. And it's not that it works easily because a lot of people don't really like it because the returns aren't as exciting. You can't get an IRR of 35% with no debt. You can get an IRR of
mhm,
14 or 16
mhm,
if the deal's good, but a lot of people like more risk, and they also, because they think there's more return, and they also like shorter term deals. And we do very long term deals because I think real estate is meant to be owned long term, not to be flipped.
mm,
I do a few flips now and then, but not on purpose. They come along. They're not engineered as a strategy to be a flipping operation because I think that that's more of a gambling mentality, whereas long-term ownership is more of an investment mentality. So if someone doesn't like long-term deals, they can find someone else who likes short-term deals. If someone wants a lot of high IRR projections, they should find someone else who does that. And it's just knowing my own tolerance, having been through the bad stuff, and also really paying attention to those details like the loan documents and what the leases say. Because
yeah.
you'd be so badly hurt by signing something that you really didn't know what you were getting into.
Yeah. It's I appreciate you empowering us to, push back and putting ourselves in that position. I got to ask you, there's so many different directions I want to go here, but you said so many great insights. One thing that I was thinking of is I'm so curious, this is something you've um Are you familiar with like the concept of whole life insurance policies and becoming your own bank, infinite banking? Is that something that you could ever leverage at the scale that you're at? And is that any interest to you, or does that still feel risky? What is your thought process on that? And again, you probably
Well,
see where I'm going with this, just trying to
yeah,
create an
well,
extra
yeah,
lever. Again, anything is it's just an experiment I'm putting out there. Is that worth it? Do you see it as even worth exploring? If not, why not?
no, because it's also debt.
Mm,
And I just don't want the debt. It's your borrowing to make investments. And in whole life, your whole life cash value is safe if you're with a
hmm.
good company. Most are.
Yep.
And I don't want to take that asset and take what I consider to be a safe asset and then put all kinds of risk on it by borrowing the money and putting it into something. I'm not
Yeah.
against people. Again, I'm not against people taking risk and doing that. That could work out great for somebody.
Hmm.
It's just not up my alley. It's just something
Yeah.
I've watched a lot of those podcasts where people talk about doing it, and it's fine. I'm not against it. It's
So
fine.
you believe that there's still, because where I was going with this is that to me seems like a lower risk, but you're saying you still see that as uh risk because you're still borrowing.
Yeah.
Um, Interesting.
There's a bunch of biblical references to borrowing.
Mm,
Um, this is one. The borrower is a slave to the lender.
mm,
When you get in trouble, you are. They own you,
yeah,
and they'll tell you what to do, and you can't fight with them. They tell you what to do, and you do it.
yeah,
I don't like that. I don't think that's great for my investor group. I think that being able to say we're comfortable where we're at, we don't need to borrow more and get ourselves into a leveraged position. Uh, it's just super safe to me, and I don't really feel comfortable. Now, if I was younger, I mean, you're a young man. At
mm,
your age, you should be taking more risk in many cases because you can
mhm,
afford to restart if things
yeah.
go really bad. At age 66, I'm not in a position where I want to restart.
You're just getting warmed up, Joel. Come on.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's so interesting. Oh, this is so good. You have so many gems here. Let's fast forward a little bit, right? You talked about, speaking of young, right? You took the leap. You're in your 30s, around 31. You learn the importance of details. You said one thing, not hiring right. I was just listening to this today when working out that, speaking of pattern recognition, do you almost have to go through the process of not hiring right before you can hire correctly? Or is there a hindsight 2020 that says, here's what I should have done that I didn't do? Because where I'm going with this, and please correct me if I'm wrong. You have tons of years of experience to back up your experience and your opinion on this. Is you know you don't know what you don't know, and maybe it takes you have to kiss a couple frogs to get to the right
You
person.
do. You do.
Is What do you get? Help me out. What would you have done? Could you have done it? Is it hindsight is 2020? What would you do differently knowing what you know today? Is that even fair to ask a 31-year-old, or do you feel like it's experience?
It's experience. There's a book called "You're Not the Person I Hired."
I like that. That's good.
Really, what it really is I didn't know I was hiring the wrong person. Right? That's what the book should be called. It's not you're not the
Okay.
right person. I didn't pick the right person.
Oh, that's good. Okay, reframe there.
Yeah. So yeah, I think the most experienced business people who have the largest businesses have had plenty of experience with bad hires. Bad hires are just part of the business world. And the best way to figure out if it's a good hire or not is to watch the person super closely. I'm not saying to necessarily be a
Micro.
micromanaging like control freak, but in the beginning, to really understand what that person's capable of doing rather than letting months go by and finding out they're the wrong person. So I believe that there's a way to test, and the test is giving them projects to do where you can see how they work and how they think. And if they don't do the projects well, to really interact with them and figure out what's going on, what the hell's wrong. Is it that they don't know what they're doing? Is it that I'm not a good boss? I didn't explain it well? Are the systems bad? And figuring all that out is the hardest thing in business. Many people have said to me, if it wasn't for the people, my business would be so much fun. And that's
Sounds like my wife.
yeah.
Um, let me ask you, because you kind of opened up a thought there, and I just thought of this. I've never even thought of it this way. You know, and I can't speak for everyone, but before you marry your partner, you date, right? Multiple dates. And when you hire someone, you kind of just propose without even
Yeah.
right? So is it, and I've done it at a very small scale, right? We have kind of like trial periods and stuff like that. But when you're dealing with a big company like yours, hundreds of millions at stake, etc. Um, is it just a matter of doing what you just said? Let's hire slowly, fire quickly. Like, I mean, what's the alternative here? Internships
You
for
know,
grown people. Grown people are not taking internships. Like,
it is,
right?
it's a lab. It's a lab.
Mm,
The hiring process is very much your white coat lab.
yeah.
It's just so tricky because you don't know what you're getting. People come with all kinds of baggage. And the one thing that they don't do is they don't expose their baggage. They give you their best stuff.
Oh, yeah. Of
You
course. Yeah. I
interview,
mean,
yeah.
yeah. Interviewing, and that's where I'm getting at, Joel. It's like anybody can put up a good front. I mean, you know what questions are gonna come. What are your weaknesses? Like, whatever. I think critical thinking is when I think the Googles of the world have done a good job or whatever of like, hey, considering this, here's asking questions. But there's so much to it. Like being an A player is one thing, but how do you fit in with the team culture and like I mean, there's so many nuances. Essentially, it's a family that you're bringing in a new character that hopefully blends in. And so, I don't know. When you said that, it stuck to me. Didn't hire right. I'm wondering if now that at your age and you're with your experience and with all the battle scars and the trophies that you have, you know, is there something that you could tell your younger 31-year-old self aside of outside of just, hey, it'll come with reps?
It'll come with reps. There's no way to know. I can't say to somebody, hey, by the way, I need to ask you a question. Are you an alcoholic? Hey, are you a drug addict? Are you a gambler? Are you like lazy? Are you somebody who doesn't read documents, and are you someone who can't write? I mean, all those things, you find out about these things after you hire somebody.
That's
And
scary.
it's rough, man. I mean, it's like that's the biggest problem in business is you can't really predict the person that you're hiring to be successful when you meet them and ask the questions. Now you can test them. My dad was a career counselor and he used to do testing of people. And that's a really major hedge to test them, really give them a battery of tests and a bunch of interviews with an independent third party because I tend to like people. So I'll hire someone if I like them. The problem is being
Mm,
likable doesn't make them a good employee. It makes them being likable, right?
yeah. Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah. Like the third, there's also like these personality tests. And again, how I don't know how new age this stuff is or if it's kind of go back to the basics, but there's a lot of like personality tests, there's a lot of critical thinking. I guess, I'm wondering if that's probably one of the things you've looked at or
Yes,
explored.
it's helpful, but it's not something that's
Mm,
demonstrative of
concrete.
what you're going to find out later what's wrong. Everybody's got something. You don't know
Yeah.
what it is. You're going to find in marriages, talk about dating and interviewing. Um, People get divorced. It's it's over 50% because they realize they made a mistake and they need to get out of it. So if dating
Or people change, right?
or people change, or people are the same and the person didn't see that they were different and they think the person changed, but actually they were trying to change the person and couldn't
Change them. Yeah.
succeed. Oh,
Yeah. That's
I thought
another.
I could change you.
No, that's
No.
never. That's see, that's experience right there. We know that that doesn't work. uh, well, listen, Joel, I could have you in the lab here with me for hours, and I want to be mindful of your time. You're just so easy to talk to, and it's interesting because I feel like you know I do believe like after speaking to a lot of founders and CEOs like yourselves and operators that your business, especially in your case, is a reflection of you, right? Which is really neat when you kind of see that, right? You literally turn this lesson of being debt free into a unique selling point, a USP, which is nice, and I can just tell. Um, Talking about you like people, I could tell we were having great conversations here of your likability and being very charismatic, and so I could see how that also fits into your lifestyle business of like the relationships that you value, which is really heartwarming to see, and I can really sense your passion on the other side, and we're not even in the same room. So just want to give you your flowers for that and give you kudos for building something obviously that's very sound. I'm so curious. We got so much, kind of lessons here. You talked about the landscape of industrial real estate. Where are you at now? I know here I'm looking at some of the bio, but and at 66, you tell me like you're valuing relationships. Where is it that you want to go? I think you're just getting warmed up, Joel. But I'm speaking for you. So where are you now, and where do you want to go? And is it maintaining? Is it deeper relationships? I'd just be curious as to kind of like what gets you out of bed next. But tell us where you're at now and where you're headed.
So currently we have 23 buildings. We used to have many more buildings. And what we did is we sold the ones that we think are subpar. I don't like having bad buildings. I like to have good
Mhm.
geometry. I like when the building's laid out well, when it has the proper parking, it has the proper industrial, the proper loading docks, ceiling heights.
Mm.
I want good quality property. So number one is I'm extremely careful about what we buy. I want to buy a certain type of property in a certain location. I feel good about that. I feel like we're making good judgments. I think good judgment is everything. Don't you trust people who you feel have good judgment?
Absolutely.
So I want to have good judgment about the buildings, but also I want to have solid relationships with the people who are trustworthy and honorable and loving and caring. I guess the no asshole rule.
Yeah.
That's that's so really it's picking good products, being creative, being careful with details, and establishing relationships with people who are special people. That's to me the way to go, and the money follows if the passion is there for all those things.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I don't think you're gonna have trouble kind of attracting that, bringing that into your world. As if you can see, your reputation precedes you, and you have the receipts, as I like to call them in the lab, to show for it. One thing I'm gonna kick myself if I don't ask you before you drop here, and this is very technically related, just because I'm a little bit of a geek in real estate. What are we, when we talk about these industrial buildings, are you doing any like I would assume like it's pretty lean to build. Are you seeing more buying opportunities or when you're syndicating, or are you building these? I actually we didn't even get into that, but I'm just so curious is because when I think
No,
of warehouses or right, like what is your niche in when it comes to those 23 properties?
they are all individual properties in what we call infill locations, which is near the city of Chicago or near O'Hare Airport.
Hmm.
And they are not replaceable for anywhere near what we pay for them. The cost of a building today might be $130 or $140 a square foot. So if we buy a 20,000 square foot building, it might be $2.5, $3 million. To build the same building on the same piece of land would cost $5 to $6 million. So we're not building anything in that size range. There's a lot of developers building what are the mammoth big box industrial buildings. And that's because that money comes from pension funds. And they have, or it comes from a public company that sells stock to the public, or to pension funds or insurance companies or investors in those. We buy the smaller buildings that are more entrepreneurially owned by families and individuals who are founders.
Generations who have passed it down, very similar to the family you work with. Not like your Amazon, your Boeing, right?
No.
But more of the, I don't know, Heinz ketchup. I don't even know if that would be pretty big, actually.
No,
right?
they're very large. No, I'm talking about.
But like,
yeah, I'm talking about. We have very large tenants. We have the U.S. Postal Service. We have AT&T. I mean, we've got some big companies in our building.
okay, you got some. Look at you being all humble.
Yeah, but we've got some really little companies who have 20 employees or 30 employees.
Yeah, mom and pop.
Yeah, I love that. And they occupy smaller buildings that are not replaceable. And no one's building any new ones of our size because there's no land available and because of the cost. And in fact, the market in this size building isn't growing, it's shrinking because a lot of these older buildings are being torn down to build data centers in industrial.
That's
so
right.
They might tear down 6 buildings to put up 1 data center. And if that happens, our market shrinks. So we've got
But your value goes up.
Yeah, our values are very high, and it's hard to find buildings to buy because nobody wants to sell them.
Right.
So buying buildings is really difficult. And and because we're so picky to buy the ones we think are great, it's even harder. So we're very selective, and it's frustrating. It's like a needle in a haystack.
Well, I was gonna say, do you plan to expand? I know you're very big in the Chicago area. Is there any interest of finding more land, or is there a reason you're keeping it strategically in that area based on maybe relationships, lifestyle? I don't know. You tell me.
Chicago's a very active industrial market because it's the midpoint in the country where most of the trucking and the rail goes right through the center of our town.
Oh, interesting.
So from a logistics standpoint, it's really important. Also from a population, it's a huge population, the third or fourth largest metro area. So there's a lot of employees, there's a lot of companies, there's a lot of culture, restaurants. The lake has, Lake Michigan, fresh water, fresh, safe water. So Chicago's a great market. People are piling in to get here from all over the world, literally all over the world. Asia, Europe, Middle East, they want to invest in industrial in Chicago. So I feel like the market's big enough. There's 16,000 buildings. If that can't keep me busy without getting on an airplane, I'm crazy, right? There's got to be enough in those 16,000 buildings that I could find a few things to do every month.
So I would imagine you're just as busy building relationships with existing owners who may be looking to exit, and you're playing the long-term game there as well, right?
I am so all over them.
Yeah. There you go. They know you by first and last name.
They know me.
That's awesome.
They know
you. Well, hey, listen, if they don't know you, they can't flow you. So with that said, thank you, Joel, for coming on. This was I learned a lot of lessons myself, and I'm sure my audience is gonna get tons of gems. I could just tell with your energy that you have and your focus and your grit, at the same time your warmth, that you're only going to continue to do some great things. And so I'm looking forward to that. Maybe we'll have to have you back into the lab so we can kind of capture even more ingredients and recipes from your successes. So thanks again for hopping on. How can the people, I know you've put yourself out there, rightfully so, with the good that you're doing. I know I can find you at britproperties.com, but where else can folks, if they want to hear more of your story, follow what you're doing, or even just simply be in touch with you, what's the best way for folks to reach out?
For sure, the website, Brit with 1T, BRIT properties.com. And through BritProperties.com, we have our offerings and a lot of information about what we do and some contact information to reach us.
Got it. And you've been so good with gems, so I'm going to put you on the spot here. How do you want to part our words here for our audience, maybe an even younger audience? What are some words of wisdom that you want to leave us with today?
I'm going to talk about you. I would say that the gems that I can share are that the best question askers who are attentive, ask good questions, listen well, and then have good follow-up questions are the most successful people. And you are really very, very good at this.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. I'm just a student of the game myself, and we're just getting warmed up, and I stand on the shoulders of giants. So that means a lot, and I'm very passionate about this, and I don't take your time for granted. So thank you for returning that. I received that. Thank you, Joel.
Sure.
Joel, thank you so much. And just like that, Experiment Nation, we are out.
Experimentation, I believe there are two critical components that will help you achieve your goals very quickly and succeed. Number one, it's information like this that you received on a show, in an episode, and content that you can find on my YouTube channel or anybody's channel. And then there's a community. And the way we've been able to expedite our process, the way people in our community, who are people that we consult, mastermind members, whoever, they get the information on an episode like this, but then they also have a support, whether it's me guiding them or being guided through a community. There is an opportunity for you listening to be able to expedite your process or even expedite your results that you're seeking by being part of the community. If that is what you're interested in, we at Experiment Nation happen to have a community devoted to helping maximize your occupancy and your profitability altogether, regardless of which market that you are in. And for that reason, you have an opportunity where you can go to experimentrealestate.com/submit if you're looking to work in an environment that can help you prosper faster. Call out any areas that you might not be familiar in, especially the blind spots. That's where a guide comes in hand, and I would be a pleasure and honor to be your guide. But in order to make sure you're a good fit, make sure you go to experimentrealestate.com/submit so that my team can go ahead and take it and see if you're a good fit to join the mastermind and the multiple programs that we have. In addition to that, I'm also now a YouTube partner, which means that I want to give you more access to information, more access to Q&As, more access to the questions that actually come out of our mastermind to help people expedite the process. We've seen people get anywhere from $4,000 to $5,000 to $6,000 to even $7,000 a month net on just one door by applying the strategies that we use by working with corporations and furnished accommodation in a very strategic way. So if you're interested, make sure you also subscribe, because I'm going to have different tiers that's on YouTube now that we've become YouTube partner, to continue to be the bridge to your success in your lab. And your lab means your life, your goals, or wherever you're trying to head. So make sure you also hit the subscribe button on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/real estate experiment. We'll be there. You can also look us up at Midterm Rental Insurance Experiment. We will be there. Make sure you hit the subscribe, because that's when you'll know the tiers that are available to you that make sense for you, your marketplace, for your results. Remember, you're only one experiment away. Let's build.